Disclaimer. This content is created based on my unprofessional opinion and analysis of related topics just for social communication purposes, to expand our mutual domain of views by discussing and analyzing the matters. The source of information and evidence for this content is social media, which contains facts, rumors, hearsay, and some other fragments that there is no proof for their authenticity or accuracy. So, please pay special attention. There is no claim on the reliability and confirmation of the conclusions presented here.
It's almost 2 years since this murder happened, which unfortunately hasn't been solved yet due to some reasons. In this session, I don't want to get into these obstacles because reviewing such a subject needs a whole session to be dedicated to. In this session, I want to share my opinion and speculations about the topic and some points that seem to have been out of sight yet. I am among those people who believe the murder had been premeditated and completely calculated for a while and performed by 3 or 4 frat boys. I strongly believe all 4 victims were targeted and were supposed to be murdered together at the same time and location, maybe due to the same motives, but different triggers. Unlike those people who think that Kaylee's and Ethan's murders had been collateral ones for the reason they were not supposed to be there that night, and therefore the murderers didn't know they had been there, I believe not only Kaylee's and Ethan's presence at the 1122 King Roadhouse at murder night was not an accident or a coincidence, but also it had been a well-managed plan set by the murderers for quiet some time before. My reason for thinking this way is that, in contrast with those who believe it could have been a crime of passion, to me the romantic and emotional issues couldn't have been the main motive in this case. In my opinion, such a heinous murder with this level of atrocity, leaving 4 victims behind and happening on 2 different levels of a house, in such a short amount of time couldn't be done by only one individual and just out of passion. Because one person can't be in love with more than one individual, whereas there have been 3 girls who were killed in this case. So, the main motive couldn't be emotional issues and done by one killer. If the murders had been done out of passion, first, the killer would have given up his motive after killing his loved one because the peak of his rage would be at the killing point. And after the murder happened, his anger would change to satisfaction immediately, and his rage peak would drop down totally, and his situation would change from fight mode to flight mode. Even if he were stuck in a compulsion condition, he had to kill only one more individual in addition to his loved one that had been sleeping in the same room with her. Whereas we have a quadruple murder here that happened in 2 different rooms and even different stairs, which was too nonsense and irrelevant to his main goal and target to take any more risk to kill them too. Second, if we believe all 3 girls had been murdered out of passion, therefore we have to accept there must have been more than one killer, at least 2, if not 3 killers, one in love with each girl in each room because, as I mentioned, one person couldn't have been in love with more than one girl at the same time. Therefore, in my opinion, the main motive couldn't have been emotional. Of course, the presence of emotional factors in this case is quite evident, but not as the main motive, but as the factor that shows itself in the level of the brutality of the murder. The experience of rage, anger, and jealousy by the murderers can be obvious at least in the murder of 2 of the victims. In Kaylee's, who had cut off with Jack D for a while before the incident, and in Ethan's murder, whom Zana had chosen over another guy. It must be noted here some people may compare the killer in this case with Ted Bundy, and say if he could kill more than one girl in a sorority, then in this case the killer can do it too. But the point here is Ted Bundy didn't kill the women he loved, completely the opposite. He didn't do any harm to his girlfriend and her daughter. He was obsessed with killing women with special and similar traits like long and dark hair that was not love or passion. Even one of the girls whom he let go was the one whose hair wasn't long enough to provoke his obsession and desire to kill her. Now the question would be, what kind of necessity could demand such manslaughter that caused 4 individuals to be murdered with such atrocity? I think the main motive in such a case must have been sufficiently critical, beyond, and more general than passion reasons. In other words, there must have been a strong necessity, as the main motive demanded 4 individuals to be removed and shut down for the reason their existence could have been a threat to those whose interests could be at risk by them. Considering these 3 roommate girls were so close to each other, and naturally, they might have shared their daily different issues, which is normal and common behavior among the roommate girls, besides the close relationship between Xana and Ethan, who were almost a couple that makes it predictable they might have shared many social and personal concerns. It seems to me as a whole, these four friends would have been aware of each other's social secrets, strengths, and vulnerabilities to some extent. Therefore, anybody who wanted to kill any of them had to kill all of them at the same time and location. Otherwise, if only one of them were left alive, she or he could be the first person who would know who the killers could be. So the killers must have had a so crucial motive for killing them all, which put the killers in an excessive, risky, and critical situation. Consequently, that was crucial for the killers to premeditate the situation in advance. In such a condition, they had to gather all four students in the same place to commit their crime, leaving no chance for any of them to be left alive to expose the criminals later. So, in contrast to those who believe Kaylee and Ethan weren't supposed to be there, I believe this murder not only hadn't been the result of an impulsive decision, but also all the necessary conditions were completely well managed and pre-planned in advance. I believe that the killers at least must have orchestrated 3 conditions, which are as follows. 1. Drawing Kaylee back there in an inviting form by Dylan. 2. Creating a pre-planned fight between Ethan's and Zana's with the frat boys at Sigma Chi, to lead Ethan to stay with Zana at 1122 King Road that night. 3. Pre-planning to make Maddie fully drunk to elicit some information out of her mouth, possibly by Adam. Here are my explanations for each of them. As for Kaylee, it has been said Dylan Mortensen invited her as her +1 for an event. It must be noted that I don't want to accuse Dylan of having a negative part in this case. As everybody knows, our access to evidence and documents has been too little to make us qualified to judge anybody confidently. So, it doesn't mean Dylan must have drawn Kaylee there knowingly and out of evil intentions. Dylan herself may have been tricked and deceived by those frat boys responsible for this crime. They might have lured Dylan to invite Kaylee there, for example, by pretending Jack decided to surprise Kaylee by proposing to her, or at least by reconciling to Kaylee. This lie would be enough for DM or any friends of Kaylee's to think she is doing a favor to Kaylee and does what they asked her to do without telling anyone. Therefore, in such a case, any person may accept to do the job willingly. So, I believe that it wasn't DM who wanted to draw Kaylee back to Moscow, Idaho in the first place. Same with Ethan, they must have planned to draw him to the murder house that night. Therefore, the frat boys managed a premeditated fight that night, which caused Ethan and Xana to stay together at Zana's place for more protection. Even Bethany Funk's exculpatory evidence for Brian could be in this regard. Therefore, to me, none of the murders were collateral. Consequently, the killers must have been more than one person, and I think it is a huge distraction trying to determine where the murder started from, the second floor or the third floor. I think there must have been 4 persons involved in the crime at the same time. One of them went for Kaylee and Maddie, and 2 of them for Zana and Ethan. Because I think Maddie had been too drunk to be able to fight back or call 911, whereas defeating Ethan and Xana could have been more risky for the killers, for the possibility of Xana could find the chance to call 911 or shout for help. So, I think 2 killers might have gone for them. The 4th criminal possibly stayed out of the house as a guard, who also might have kept Murphy outside the house during the incident in order not to let him become panicked or make excessive noise. I think Murphy had been kept outside the house during the murder and then taken back to the room after the chaos was finished. Otherwise, it could be possible that Murphy shows kind of depression signs because of the panic afterward. The 3rd pre-planned situation is Maddie's excessive intoxication. Considering the unbalanced soberness situation between Kaylee and Maddie, I think Maddie hadn't been around Kaylee at the bar for a while otherwise. I don't think Kaylee would let her become drunk to that extent. Also, in the surveillance footage, we saw Kaylee ask, "Maddie, what did you tell Adam?" So it's clear Maddie had been with Adam and speaking to him for a while, and that was when she became drunk. It seems to me that Adam might have plied Maddie with alcohol to get her drunk and elicit some information out of her mouth, which seems to have worked very well too, and Maddie revealed everything to him as she answered to Kaylee. I told Adam like everything. The kind of everything that might have driven someone or some individuals crazy enough to go to get the girls as Jack S. told them. As the last point, I think it is worth mentioning an issue that has not been discussed so far related to the photo taken from inside the Corner Club that shows Maddie, Kaylee, and Jack D. I don't know who released this picture. I heard some photographs and footage had been gathered by Olivia. If so, I am surprised that only one photo has been released to her, whereas there were at least 2 more cameras there according to the number of the cameras the photo was taken out of it. There had been more cameras that could give us important information from different angles at the bar. The main goal of releasing this photo seems to be a confirmation that Jack D had been at the corner club at the time, to prevent him from being accused of hiding at the house in advance to ambush the girls. It is very possible that Jack himself released the photo, whereas we could find important information, like when Maddie was talking to Adam, what was doing Kaylee and where she was sitting, or to whom she was speaking. More important than anything was Jack's coat that he lent her when she wanted to get back home, which to me could be the reason they didn't release more photos or any piece of surveillance footage. And the reason why Maddie's coat had to be found by the fire hydrant, as I explained in my first video.